I want to do a few things. I want to do a few things with this live stream that are a bit. It's going to be a bit all over the place. So forgive me. I kind of want to do some housekeeping, if that's even fair. I a lot of times I'm in process. I'm thinking about things, and coming on and live streaming, making videos is really helpful. I haven't really been able to sit down and make actual videos in a while, and that's just the nature of the season of life that I'm in right now, in between houses, working on a few other projects, and we will get to those maybe if we have time. And so what happens is a lot of ideas, I listen to podcasts or I read books or I talk to people, and I'm getting input, and I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. And I would love to share those ideas with people that are interested, particularly people who are interested in Christian theology. And yet it just becomes a backlog because if I don't have the time necessarily to sit down and make a video. And so this is kind of my backlog. This is what I would be working on if I was working more on the podcast. I have a few thoughts. I saw a clip from Matt Walsh today. It's sort of going around. It's going around Twitter. I could probably find it really quick if I was smart. I would already have it picked up, but I don't. I want to also. I'm sorry. I want to check. YouTube Studio has changed a little bit, so I was gonna just give me one more second here. Manage. Interesting. Anyway, it just looks different. Error stream key is assigned. I think I've just messed things up now. Sorry, give me a second. I'm in the weeds trying to figure out what I did that made it look different. Connection error, encoder. There we go. Okay. Now it's back up. That was weird. Sorry. Where was I? We're going to X. We're going to Matt Wall. We're going to this little clip. It's kind of funny. It's funny what goes around, or at least what shows up to me. This is the clip. I'll play it, But it's just funny that the impression that a lot of people have is that Matt Walsh is sort of being abused by the people that he works for, and I'm indifferent when it comes to Matt Walsh. I'm kind of indifferent when it comes to Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, and some of these other guys. I mean, sometimes I find them interesting. Sometimes their commentary is interesting. Sometimes it's not. And this kind of idea that Matt is just sort of being abused. Now, Matt is he at least calls himself a Catholic. Of course, we're interacting with people through a digital medium. I can't see into Matt's soul, but I don't get the sense that he's much more than nominal. So you have Ben, who's a Jewish man, Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles, I believe, are Catholic men, and then I don't know what Clavin is. That's Spencer, right? Not the other guy. Anyway, and I think sometimes this is why I thought this clip was interesting. I think sometimes a person like Ben Shapiro needs a Christian straw man to beat up on. I don't know that Ben, from his worldview, could really contend with a Christian. And I know Ben is very good in debate and things like that, but he's never really going to contend with a genuine Christian who really understands who Jesus is. And I'm not trying to out Matt Walsh. Maybe he's a biblical scholar, beyond anything that I know. But he tends to keep it in the political sphere. He tends to keep the conversation in the sort of conservative political influencer sphere, and he doesn't seem like a person who's. And again, I get clips. I haven't watched his whole career, but he doesn't. From what I've seen of Matt Walsh and even Michael Knowles, they don't seem like people who are really pushing into a Christian theology or a Christian identity. Maybe Knowles a little bit more, but Matt Walsh. I mean, I'm kind of taking this off of a old podcast that we did. If you go back many moons ago, you would see. I still have the same headphones, but this was from 2023. I'm sorry let me know about the audio if you're coming in and you're hanging out. Again, there's these long gaps between when I can stream, and so I'm always kind of like touching the dials again and trying to make it good. As far as OBS is concerned, I'm in a good audio level. As far as the Zoom H6 is concerned, I'm still a little quiet, so let me know. The main thing is I don't want to be distorting the audio. So thank you. If you're here and you can give me some feedback on that, let me know. Even if you're showing up later on and getting the video after it goes live, let me know how you're doing, and let me know if you're interested in this stuff, why you're interested in this stuff. Temples are not apolitical. I'm going to get to a Paul Vanderklay clip here in just a second, where he says this line. I thought this was really good. Temples are not apolitical, but I wanted to. I'm just going through my my list here, and the first one, for whatever reason, is this Matt Walsh conversation. Matt Walsh, when he was on Joe Rogan, it was funny because Joe kept pushing and kept saying, "Well, tell me about why you believe this stuff. Why is it that you believe in heterosexual marriage, conservative value? What is it about your faith? What is it about your Christian faith that gets you to this point?" And Matt just never really seemed like a person who was comfortable answering the questions and talking about his faith. And maybe that's just sort of like it's a private thing for him, which is not Christianity. Sorry. Christianity is not something you keep to yourself. And so, as a, I can understand the sentiment there of like, well, I don't really talk openly about my faith. Okay. Like I can kind of get it, but if what you're saying is you're a Christian, then, it's not a private thing. And if that's where you get your sort of conservative values, and if you're willing and open to talk about your conservative values, why hesitate to talk about the foundations of those conservative values, which are Christianity? Which sort of takes us to this moment between Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh. Again, I think Ben, and from Ben's worldview as a Jewish man, I think he needs a straw man Christian. He can't, and when I say straw man, not strong, straw, he needs a fake Christian in order to have a adequate interlocutor. If he was to have just a fully sold out disciple of Jesus sitting next to him, I don't think Ben would be able to get away with what he tends to get away with. I don't think Ben's worldview is strong enough. And I say that knowing full well that Ben Shapiro is a very smart man and a very good debatist and a very good person, but I think his foundation is faulty. And so why is, sort of Matt Walsh sitting and Michael Knowles, why are they doing this? Why are they saying, I think it's because, and if I was to be really harsh, and I don't want to be this harsh to Matt Walsh or any of these guys, but I think the reason Matt Walsh would agree to be the straw man and sort of the whipping boy for Ben Shapiro is because he's a grifter, or he's a coward, or he's both. again, I don't want that to be true, but if you're wondering why someone like Matt Walsh sticks with the Daily Wire when it's clearly falling down in flames, that would be my take. I don't know. Matt seems like a smart person. He seems like a smart individual. I think he would abandon ship if he could. And so I'm looking for answers.
That's the only way that America exists in the first place. So it's worth talking about.
So he was just talking about, and I'm going to pause it because I'm sure if Daily Wire ever found this video, they would really want to do their best to take it down. He's talking about empire. He's talking about an American empire, and he's sort of pushing on like, yes, he's for empire. Matt Walsh is good to go on American empire, and this is the response.
Man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm really enjoying neocon Matt Walsh. This is like my favorite version of Matt Walsh. This is really exciting.
It's not neocon.
I know. I'm joking, Matt. I would never call you a neocon. I know.
I know.
Yeah, I'm joking. I would never call you a neocon, which I just called you. And I think it's, anyway, I listen to this and I have to some degree received a similar treatment. I do think some people, they invent a Christianity, or they invent you, right? So this is what Ben's doing. He's projecting onto Matt Walsh a version of Matt Walsh that Matt Walsh does not agree with. And he's saying, this is who you are, Matt Walsh, and that's the straw man. And Matt Walsh, as a Christian person, I think his Christianity gets lumped into that sort of straw man. So Matt Walsh is now LARPing as a Christian straw man for the purpose of Ben Shapiro to have someone who he can actually interact with.
All the things to call me.
I'm looking forward to war with
Globalist
Denmark.
shill.
I think that's going to be
Matt
exciting.
Walsh, they got him. They finally got him. They got Walsh. They got
Call me
to
George
him.
Bush.
That makes a really...
So call me George Bush. Yeah. So he sort of just takes it. And again, I don't want to make too much of this clip. I don't even want to spend too much time on it. It's just, it is interesting to me that I think that is a microcosm of a bigger ideological thing that is happening between conversations between Jewish and Christian people. I think a lot of evangelical Christians believe that somehow Christianity is a branch off of Judaism. And it really isn't. And I'll get to some of the books that I'm reading here in a little while. But that's the idea, is rather than, if Christianity is sort of this branch off of Judaism, which it isn't, then a lot of Christians feel like they owe a lot to, like Matt, is this Christian man. Maybe he feels like he owes a lot to Ben Shapiro, a Jewish man. But actually, it's the inverse. Modern Judaism and modern expressions of Judaism, you could say, really owe everything to Christianity. If not for the emergence of Christianity, you would not have the Judaism of today, the Judaism of Ben Shapiro. And so that, I think, is what's going on in many cases. And I thought that this interaction between Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh was kind of a microcosm of that. And so what's going on with Matt Walsh? Grifter, coward, both, maybe neither. Maybe I'm misunderstanding Matt Walsh, and I don't want to misread who he is. But I see this Christian straw man stuff going on all over the place, and it does trigger me. I'll be completely honest. If you're going to debate Christianity, debate real Christianity. If you have a problem with Jesus, then have a problem with the real Jesus, not some creation. And then I was going to do a few things. Why is it, this is sort of spinning off of more Charlie Kirk stuff, which I will be honest, I have gone down the rabbit hole. I mean, that case is fascinating. It's wild. I feel like Joe Rogan did a bit after COVID. He was like, I don't even think we landed on the moon anymore. You go down some of these stories. This case is wild. And one of the things about the Charlie Kirk case, and you can look at the video that I did, I do touch on this. I really thought that this interview with Gen Z college students, these are chapter leaders, really is telling why a nation like Israel, even a nation like America, needs young people to buy into their ideological framework. I think the more you push a particular narrative, the less truth that narrative holds, the earlier you need people to buy into that narrative. That's why they need the youth. They need the youth vote, because their foundation is just not built on a lot of truth. And human nature is we are kind of resistant to truth, not to truth, to being deceived on some level, and so I think just that cognitive dissonance, you have to start early in order to get people to kind of, I guess, not push. If they experience a little bit of cognitive dissonance, they can kind of excuse it away because they were taught at a young age to excuse it away. And so I think that some parts of that narrative, even what we were just talking about with Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro, and as far as how Christianity and Judaism relate to each other, I think part of that narrative is proving to be sort of built on shaky ground. Alex, what's up, man? Okay, audio level is lower than normal. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Let me see. Gosh. You know what? I'm going to go up a little bit. Audio level. Yo. All right. We'll see what happens. And if I edit this one down, I'll just have to. You know what? Maybe after. You know what I'll do? I'll do this one. It's just because I have not been making videos very regularly. I need to probably, and this room is different. The room that I'm in is different. I'm trying to work on this room. So I think what I'll have to do with this live stream is I'll probably let it roll for now. See, now I think I'm way too high, huh? I'll probably let it roll, and then I'll do some edits on the back end, and I'll release like a shorter clip down version, which I think is probably just what I need to do. So what I have right now on this Zoom, and again, if anybody is like techie with the audio, it's a dial, and I feel like the dial is just so sensitive, and if I change it just slightly, then it's a significant change. I go into the red, so man, normal now. Thanks, Alex. We'll stick with that for now. I was peeking into the red, so if you didn't hear any distortion in there, maybe that's okay, but I'll just have to go through. I'll have to listen to it, and then I'll have to again, I just touch the dial ever so slightly, and it seems like the reaction is huge. Now, the other thing that I did, I used to have my audio, this Zoom H6 thing, this thing that I'm using to connect to my computer, it used to be mounted right here below my camera, so I could see it. Like as I was looking, I could see it. If it was peeking into the red, I would know automatically. Now it's on my desk, and it's actually kind of obscured by my. You guys don't need to know this, but here we are talking. It's kind of obscured by my microphone, and so it's been kind of weird. I did notice that the last video that I did, or the last live stream that I did, I don't know if it was distorted during the live stream or if it was just when I downloaded the video after the fact. But anyway, I'll keep an eye on it. Thank you, Alex. I'm actually going into something. If you're sticking around for a second, I'm actually going into something that I think is right up your alley, and it's the Tower of Babel system. I think Alex maybe is the one who used this phrase, the Tower of Babel system. I'm kind of pulling from him, and again, this idea that you've built a tower. You're trying to say we can be like God. You're trying to, it's a faulty system, and it's anti-truth, anti-God, right? God comes, he reveals truth. This Tower of Babel system is a mockery of that, and it really does go back to the garden. It goes back to the original lie. You can become like God. See, I was trying to do this. This is much better. This is so bright. I used the blue to try to tone it down a little bit, but it is what it is. Logos wasn't gonna. I didn't want to do it all in Logos. But if you go back, the lie is that you can be like God, even though Adam and Eve are made in the image of God, and so. That system, that lie, given enough time, the lie starts to get exposed. You have to reinvent new ways of telling the lie. And in this world where we're just sharing so much content, so many ideas are going out there, it's really getting harder, I think, to lie in some ways. I think some ways it's easier to put a lie out there, but it really doesn't exist for very long. And that's why I think, some of the Charlie Kirk stuff is just wild. It's wild to look at. And so anyway, that's why these political systems, they need the algorithm to prop up sort of this deception and this lie. There was something from this Baron Coleman. So I've been watching Baron Coleman. He's a broadcaster, a podcaster, a philosopher, also a Catholic Christian, but he's more outspoken about his faith than Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles. And I say that knowing full well that they do talk about Christianity on their podcasts and stuff. But again, I feel like there's a little bit of a straw man going on there with regards to Matt Walsh. And I don't remember, but yeah, if you go back to this Joe Rogan, or if you go back to this, I point it out in my video. It's the section called "Whose Authority Do We Live By?" And I guess I'll share this and I'll make sure it exists. You know what I didn't do? I never remember if the live chat is on replay, and I need to set that up as like the default setting, and I don't ever remember until I'm live streaming. And then I share those links and I go, oh, here's the link. And then live replay isn't playing on the VOD. So sorry guys if it's not. When push comes to shove, it's clear Matt he's at least not comfortable talking about his Christianity, or maybe he just doesn't believe it that much. So he just sort of like falls into this sort of vague, conservative political talking points rather than a robust Christian presentation of why he believes what he believes. I thought Baron Coleman actually did a really good job with this. It connects to the conversation between Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro and kind of that dialogue, and I'll try to remember exactly where it connects here. I'm just going to play a clip. It's a little bit sped up because I may use this in future videos or whatever. So,
as culturally unifying as the Christmas season has become, the message of the one whose birth made the season is not unifying at all. His message is exclusive. Some will hear the message and accept it. Others will hear it and reject it. The message is to repent from your sin. Go and sin no more. Change your life. And above all, accept from Jesus forgiveness and the promise of eternal life.
So that's clear. That's clear. It's like, okay, this is what as a Christian, this is what I believe. Not some, sort of, vague political talking point. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Baron.
Of course, as much as Jesus' message is for anyone, it's not for everyone. Some will hear it and accept it. Some will never hear it. Some will hear it and ignore it. Some will hear it and outright reject it. I've thought of this reality more this Christmas season than I have in my previous 45 Christmases on Earth. Something feels different this year, or at least something is different in me this year. In years past, I've noticed the political right has sort of been the side of the aisle trying to conserve some semblance of a Christian identity and Christian heritage in the United States and the Western world.
Okay. Do you guys feel that? When he said that, I was like, yeah. Something does feel different. Maybe something in me feels different. And I feel like maybe even in some ways there has been something building for a while. If I was to go back and say, okay, when did I really start to notice something changing in the world or changing in me? I would have to go back a couple years and say, this is really where it was building. And to be completely honest, that was part of the reason why I started this podcast. I started this podcast talking about, why does Christianity keep coming up on Joe Rogan? Why does Christianity keep coming up on all these podcasts where you wouldn't think of it. Russel Brand, Jordan Peterson, maybe Jordan Peterson a little less so, but clearly Russel Brand and Joe Rogan, it's like popping up. Why? What's going on? And that's kind of what started changing in me, is just that realization that just as the Tower of Babel system that's built on lies is going to, I think, be kind of inhibited, or maybe not downright destroyed, but certainly inhibited the more just reasonable people who are pursuing the truth speak and share ideas, and the lies end up, they don't have sustainability. They don't have the power to sustain the onslaught of dialogue the way we're doing dialogue today. Lies get exposed, and the truth does have that carrying capacity. And so, and that's why I think what's happening with people like Matt Walsh, who might be sort of nominally Christian, he ends up just becoming a straw man for Ben Shapiro. And so that's kind of what I think maybe where Barron's going here with this sort of touching on the political right.
If you closed your eyes, say a year ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and you pictured a conservative Republican, you could almost smell the pages of the Bible in the picture your mind produced. That's not to say every single conservative Republican was a weekly churchgoer, but on average they were. Their leaders certainly proclaimed to be. On that topic, it's hard to put my feeling into words, but I have this lingering, nagging feeling I can't ignore. In the lead up to and the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's death, there's been a concerted effort to change that reality.
Yeah. We'll get to this with the Paul Vanderklay clip, but the politics is downstream from theology. You know, it really is. Like, temples are not apolitical. You know, they are part of building a political system. So how much of the political right in America was genuinely Christian, and how much of it was simply co-opting Christianity because we know that Christian people care a lot and they'll show up and they'll vote. Like, they're a powerful force. I think a very similar thing is happening in the Gospels during the ministry of Jesus, particularly in the Gospel of John that Paul Vanderklay is going through.
To that end, there's a battle underway. The battle is for the heart and future of America. The old battle lines for the future of America were between the conservative right wing, largely composed of Christians, against the godless left wing. To be a conservative thought leader in America, you almost had to profess a belief in Christ. To run for office, you had to have a picture of yourself carrying a Bible into church. We on the right still face a godless left wing, but the real fight for the future is within the right wing itself.
And is that, and again, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find good spots to pause, you know, that is that, now I forgot what I was going to say, because I'm apologizing for interrupting Barron, who, this is just a recording with Barron, and he's not really here with us. Yeah, we'll get to it. Sorry about that.
We're fighting for control of our own movement. Nowhere was this more clear than on the stage of TPUSA this weekend. But the fight extends far beyond that stage. If MAGA died with Trump asking if we're still talking about Jeffrey Epstein, then TPUSA died by allowing Ben Shapiro to open their conference by throwing a hissy fit about Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, there's Ben. Ben emerges again in the conversation. Yeah, so similarly, I mean, I guess maybe he paid a lot of money to be on the stage. He probably pays Matt Walsh a lot of money to stick around and be his sort of straw man whipping boy. And is that the system that we have inherited that is very similar to the Tower of Babel system?
I don't know how to say this tactfully, so I'll just say it the only way I know how to say it. Ben Shapiro despises you. He despises most of us. He thinks the Jesus we follow is a fraud. He assumes Jesus was a liar, or worse. and that he died and rotted in his grave. And he's not alone. I won't call them all out by name because most of them didn't take the stage this weekend. But Ben Shapiro is a part of a growing movement on the right that not only doesn't want to put America first, they want to put Christians anywhere else but first.
Yeah. And that's what's happening. You know, that's what I saw here. That's kind of what I saw in this little clip. And again, I don't watch these guys because I don't care to listen to their rhetoric. But you know, you see this playing out, and it's like, we you know, I do think someone like Ben would say he loves America and he loves Christianity and he supports Christians, and he would say a lot of those things. But again, that's not true to his worldview. So the only real path forward is to admit that, is to say, you know, I'm not really for you Christians. I think you Christians are heretics. I think you Christians got it all wrong. I think you Christians are idol worshipers. Or I've changed my stance, and now I do see who Jesus really is, and I've come to be a follower of Jesus, and now we have a path forward. So, man, yeah. I could. Do we finish? Do we finish with Barron? Do we finish with Barron? I kind of want to. Maybe we'll stick with him. Yeah, arguably them versus us at fault. Who can flatten their own stance to fit one? Again, hopefully I've got the live chat replay on for the video, but Tower of Babel, the secular human-based world order. Yeah, basically, yeah. Alone, I think that it is human-based and spirit-influenced. This is Ephesians, right? World forces and spiritual forces sort of combining and colluding. And that manifests actually in these sort of chimeras, right? Human-God chimeras. And if we want to look at where, you know, the plan is here, if I was to sort of be making more content and being on more regularly, you would see this when I hear JRE, human chimera, and the Antichrist in Revelation. So there's a few things, particularly that Joe Rogan has been talking about, that is essentially about creating an Antichrist, a human God, a human AI, or whatever. And so, yes, I would say human-based, spirit-influenced, something to that nature. Ephesians 4:4, we can go there. We can go there. There's one body and one spirit, just also as you are called into one hope of your calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God, Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. But to each one grace is given according to the measure of Christ's gift. As a worldview network. Yeah. Do you mean, okay, so when you say as a worldview network, this Ephesians 4:4 talking about one body, are you talking about ecumenicism? And how far does that go? I think there's a lot of, when you were talking about the sort of the us versus them, I was always taught, you know, to sort of fear relativism, right? Either or, both and types of thinking. And, you know, the both and was always dangerous. It's always dangerous to sort of step into this both and. And yet I think there's a part of the body of Christ that is more both and than many denominations would like to think. I think we have a lot to learn from each other. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, feel free to, you want to talk about what it means? I have to give it some thought. Give it some thought. Okay, Genesis 9. All right, I'll track with you here in a second. Okay, so that's where the human. Let's see, where were we? Human God, chimera. Yeah, spiritual forces and world forces coming together, colluding. All right, so on this conversation now, there's one side of that. Did I say we were going to do all the rest of Baron Coleman? So this is touching on essentially the question of how Jewish people and Christians are going to interact online, and what are the ground rules? What are the rules of this game? Because in past attempts, my own attempts at engaging in this conversation, I think one of the things that was difficult was realizing that Ben Shapiro is not playing by the same rules. And I'll use Ben Shapiro as sort of an archetype of the type of person I'm talking about. Ben Shapiro has to win. That's the rule of his game. The game that Ben Shapiro plays is Ben Shapiro wins. And you've probably met people like this. You've probably interacted with people like this on the playground when you were at school. As soon as the game starts to go in your favor and away from them, they suddenly change the rules to the game. They'll say, brave ecumenicism, you have to be brave, or something like that, or whatever. And yet, they don't hold themselves to that same standard. They get to retreat into their own definitions of things, and you have to come to them and to their definitions. Just like, again, Christianity. What do you mean by this? And if you're referencing Constantine more than Augustine, then you're not talking about Christianity, I would say. And so there's this straw man Christianity that is being propped up as though that's the interlocutor between Jewish people and Christian people. But I don't think that's the way forward. I don't think Christians can say, well, yeah, okay, sorta, sure. I think as a Christian, you say, I have the Spirit of God, and it's the Spirit that leads to all truth. I have the Word of God, and so I don't really defer. If anything, it would be the body of Christ. I think that there's everyone who has the Spirit. Jesus says this. He says, my sheep know my voice, right? They're going to hear the voice of God. They're going to read Scripture and understand it and then move forward. So that would be, again, how do we move the ball forward? How do we play this game the right way? And I would say, in order to play the game the right way, you have to sort of agree on a set of ground rules. And so maybe with that, we'll try to go into Paul Vanderklay and a few of this other. So first, I'm kind of over First Fruits of Zion. I might touch on some of their other stuff, but this was back when it was late last year, talking about Christmas and Hanukkah, and again, I get triggered. I think it was First Fruits of Zion pointing out that Jesus is in the temple in John chapter 10. He's in the temple as though he's participating in Hanukkah, and yet John chapter 10 doesn't say that he's participating in Hanukkah. It just says that he happens to be in the temple. He's actually in the portico of Solomon. He's not even really in the temple. He's outside the temple. He's a liminal figure. He's on the edge. He's moving people, if anything, moving people away and to the edge. But I will give that over to debate because I may be wrong on that. That may be part of my interpretation. I think there are ways in which the temple was still getting some things right, because in John 6 or John 7, you have Jesus at the temple again at the Feast of Booths. But again, he draws attention to himself. He says, if anybody is thirsty, come to me and drink. And so, yeah, I think there's some things there, but not as... I think people like First Fruits of Zion, some of these Judaizers who are trying to sort of make, and again, I think it would be that Christians need to go to sort of Christianity sort of is a branch off of Judaism, which it just isn't. They're overclaiming the data. Yes, Jesus is at the temple. Yes, it's the Feast of Dedication. but also, yes, he's in the portico of Solomon. He's not in the temple. And so I actually think, and I'll get to some of your guys' comments. Thank you for being here. Yeah. And so I think actually, I just want to shout out, nope, we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there. I thought I had it.
What's up, everybody? And
What's up, Christian? Okay, let's see. I can go up here.
And
So
welcome
I need
back
to get to this. So again, this is the plan. This is what I'm sharing some of the stuff that hopefully I'm working on. This may take me all year to get to. I don't know. But with that, and I have not really gotten much. I went into it a little bit. I haven't gone very far into this, but I would assume that Christian and Yosef's conversation is much better than the Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro. I think we need less Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro and more Christian and Yosef. And again, I have not really watched this video. I've watched the first 30 minutes of it or so, or listened to it. So I guess maybe I got halfway through or so. But I appreciate both of these people. And Christian is ironically a Christian man. Yosef is a Jewish man, and they're having conversation. My assumption is that they're having a more productive conversation, and so we'll get to that when we get to that. But I would say that men like Christian and Yosef are better equipped at establishing the ground rules for future conversation between Christians and Jews. I think. And you can look at the Gospel of John, and I'll do this with, I may just spend my time with Paul Vanderklay as he goes through the Gospel of John, because the Gospel of John has been fascinating. I think the Gospel of John is portraying a picture of a resurrected Israel. Hold on. And so that's going to take me to some of the books that I'm reading, but I do think it is a resurrected Israel. I've pointed this out, but after Jesus resurrects Lazarus, he goes to Ephraim. Is it 10 or 11? 10 is the feast. Is it 11? 10 is the feast of dedication. That's where we just were there. Yeah, the sickness is not going to end in death. Okay, so he resurrects Lazarus. Isn't he in? Okay. Well, anyway, he resurrects Lazarus. And you have this really cool picture in the middle of John's gospel where some people will look at John's gospel as being antagonistic to the Jewish people. And I would say Judean. I think Judean is just a better translation of what John is talking about. I'm not talking about modern Jewish people. I think that's anachronistic. I think there's more distinctions there than people want to let on. I think we're dealing. If you want to talk about replacement theology, it's that we're using the term Jew to describe two different people: the Judeans that are part of John's gospel, and John uses this term, the Jews, constantly. It's translated the Jews, but I would make the argument that Judean is better. And so, and the reason is right here, actually. I mean, there's multiple examples of this throughout the Gospel of John. But therefore, many of the Judeans came to Mary and saw that what he had done and believed in him. So there you go, right there. He's calling Judah, he's calling the Judeans back to a resurrected Israel. And all Israel, northern kingdom, southern kingdom, the southern kingdom of Judea. And maybe if somebody wants to do, this was Paul, he says, to the Judean first, right? To the Jew first, and then also to the Gentile. You see this in the ministry of Jesus. He begins to resurrect Judea. He begins to resurrect the Judeans, a la Ezekiel 37. And then he goes to Ephraim. Now, he did not say this as an only to become the high priest of the year. He prophesied that Jesus was going to die for all the nations. And then, therefore, Jesus no longer walked publicly amongst the Judeans, but went away from there to the country near the wilderness of the city of Ephraim. And so now you have Judah and Ephraim. And now what's Jesus going to do? He's going to resurrect Ephraim. So now that he's resurrected Judea, he's resurrected Judah. He's going to resurrect Ephraim, and now you have a resurrected Israel. You have a fully resurrected Israel. Eventually, again, again, this may take me all year, but eventually I'll post a video talking about Paul and the resurrection of Israel by Jason Staples. Got another one. Thanks, Matt, for this one. Between Yahweh's and Judaism, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens there, but. That's the ministry of Jesus. When you just use the term, when you use a catch-all term like the Jews, you miss this. You miss what Jesus is doing. You miss what John is telling us that Jesus is doing with the Judeans. It's not a monolithic group. There are Judeans who follow Jesus. There are Judeans who reject Jesus. And when John wants to highlight the religious nature of the group of people, he'll use something like Pharisee or something like that. But what's happening with the Judeans, I think, is quite beautiful. And so let's see. I don't remember exactly what got me on that, but I was saying that I think Paul, Christian, and Yosef are better at establishing the ground rules. Oh, and what I was going to say is I think defining your terms is part of the ground rules. I think that's part of what you have to do. You have to define what you're talking about. And that may be part of where things get stuck. But we'll get to Paul Vanderklay here. Let me see how long we've been going. Let me try to catch up. Did Jesus mention those who act an example without knowing his ministry? Let's see. Thank you, guys. All right. Let me see. Ignore me, sir. Do not let me steal you. Okay, I'm catching up. Now, I agree he's getting the discussion. How great along. We did agree on ground rules, but the Orthodox feel they were left in the dust. Okay. It's the elimination of the council mindset that caused it to split. You guys might need to say more. I might need to live stream more often. Catch up on you guys. Room for more heated discussion, without which there will be little progress. I agree. I actually think the internet is the place to do this. As much as we want to sort of be together, I really think patient digital dialogue might be the way forward. And what I mean by that is I post a video. You're free to respond to that video. Tag me, mention me, make sure I see it. And then I'll listen to your thoughts, and then I'll think about them. I actually learned this when I was in seminary. I did a lot of school online, and at first I thought, oh, this is going to be really bad. I want to be in class. I want to have immediate dialogue with people. I don't want to just be reading their comments, online. And one of the things we basically did is we had an online forum. People would post their essays, basically. And then part of your assignment was to essentially respond in written form to two people's essays. So it did cause you to read through a bunch of essays that the class was producing, which was kind of cool. And then you created a response. And what I thought was, yes, even though we're losing the immediate dialogue, what I'm gaining is the ability to patiently think through this person's position. And I read what they've written, I go do some of my own research, and then I create my response from there. And I thought that was actually a really good thing. And so that's why I think TLC, as much as I'm kind of a lurker these days, I think TLC is a great place to do dialogue. Or at least, it has been. More heated discussion. So I agree. And you can get heated, and that's okay. So now I lost you guys. Well, I'm going to try to get I'm really bad at reading people's names online. I'm sorry. Hope. Gospel are representative literature, not literary history. I think that, oh man, that's an interesting point. I think I hear what you're saying, but they are history. You know, they are real history. They're crafted and they're written in a literary fashion, but that doesn't make them non-history. And so I do think you can go to them as a historical account, but don't be anachronistic when you do that. I think modern people look for historical accounts to be just the facts. Just give me the facts or whatever. And just in the ancient world, you can just do more with story. You do more with narrative than you can just reporting on the facts, the way like the sort of modern left-brained, is that right? Left-brained sort of, I want to grasp a hold of something. I actually think, and if I have time, I'll get to some of the projects that I'm working on and some of the things I'm planning to do this year. But story is going to be a huge part of that because story excites both hemispheres of the brain, the left and the right hemisphere. I think it's actually stories heal us. I did a video on this, and I've actually talked to doctors. I've talked to psychologists about this. Stories will heal you. And I'm sorry, I was on the chat and then I glitched it out, and now I can't catch up. All the councils up to Nicaea helped to argue down on what all were able to agree on and how to worship, with the majority of those things kind of discarded or never even known or even aware. Yeah, and I think the councils are good. I think what happens sometimes is people build Christianity off of something like the Council of Nicaea, and I think it's easy to create a straw man off of that, or particularly Constantine. I think more so than anything. If you're looking at a version of Christianity that's more Constantine and less Augustine, I think is what I said. So I believe Jesus was the last faithful Hasmonean priest king of Judea. Yeah. Okay. I'd have to do some more work on that. I can recommend Ash May's. His YouTube channel has been really helpful. But let's listen in on Paul Vanderklay here. I love that Paul is doing the Gospel of John. I've been in the Gospel of John for a while now, and it is fascinating to me. I was in the book of Revelation, and then went into the Gospel of John. It has challenged me, to be completely honest. It has challenged me, and I think one of the reasons the definitions of Judaios in the Greek, which we normally translate Jew, I think is translated Judean more accurately. I know it seems like a small point, but the reason that it's actually really important for me is that I really want to create a view of Jesus. I want to understand Jesus in a way that is worthy of him, that honors him. And in order to do that, I need to understand his setting. And I don't want to just take for granted what I had been told in the past, which was something like Jesus as a Jewish man, ... fill in the blank. And it's like, well, what do you mean by that? Because when I read the Gospels, he's really pushing against a political, religious system that we would call Jewish. We would say that these are even Nicodemus. He's a ruler of the Judeans. And one of the things I want to recommend for Paul, and he may touch on this, but you can look at the beginning, middle, and end of John's Gospel, and you see sort of fascinating things. Nicodemus shows up at the beginning, middle, and end. You have the Passover at the beginning and the end. You have various festivals in the middle. And so John is doing a lot with the structure of his narrative, and Nicodemus is a fascinating character to look at as a ruler of the Judeans, a man who eventually follows Jesus, eventually becomes a disciple of Jesus. And so that, I think, is the reason. It's important to define our terms, but it's important to understand Jesus in a way that is worthy of him, that makes sense to how he revealed himself and how the Gospels reveal him. And so I know it seems like maybe a subtle point, maybe not worth arguing about, just let it go. But I guess for some reason, not for some reason, that's the reason it's important to me, is to really understand Jesus. So I can recommend Ash May's. His channel is really good. I've used clips from him before, but let's listen to Paul
and through the group a bunch of these points about.
Sorry, audio. Take your headphones out. I'll try better. I'll do better. Give me a second.
What a temple is and how it functions. Temples are not apolitical. They tend to be built by kings and regimes, and this is all about gaining divine favor for the regime and for the king and for the kingdom. The temple has a very central and crucial function for the flourishing of the kingdom, and this is throughout the ancient world.
Temples are not apolitical. You can kind of approach that in various ways, right? The regime, yes, but what about the individual? Politics has to do with the polis, the people, right? And of course, in the kingdom of God, and I had mentioned earlier why I think Christianity has a more stable foundation, is the Spirit of God indwells the individual Christians, and then the individual Christians create the body of Christ. And in that way, temples are not apolitical. The temple is very political in that it has to do with the people, the polis. But yes, in a secular framework as well, the temple is not apolitical. And I think that is something that needs to be. Ben Shapiro is not apolitical. Ben Shapiro is not a religious man. He's a political figure. He uses religion as leverage. That's why he beats up on Matt Walsh.
For example, in the northern kingdom, Ahab married Jezebel, a princess of Tyre. And so one of the things that Ahab does is builds a temple to Tyrian Baal there in Samaria, so that Jezebel can be connected with their God. Now, this helps cement the relationship between the northern kingdom and the city of Tyre. When you become a vassal, as what will happen with the Assyrians, you're supposed to, you can find this again also in the Book of Kings, you're supposed to take elements of the worship of the empire. You as a vassal will then duplicate those in your temple so you can all be in alignments with the God of the empire.
Okay, real quick segue. This is what I think when you see someone like Charlie Kirk. If you go back to this video, I made the case that Charlie, part of what led to this is the comparing Charlie Kirk to Socrates video, is that when you abandon the gods of the empire, that's how they get you. Socrates was put on trial for impiety towards the gods and deceiving the youth. Charlie Kirk is essentially put on trial for the same thing. And so you are playing, it's not just politics. This isn't just politics, right? As much as I just said Ben Shapiro is more of a political figure than he is a religious one. Hey, shout out to Christian reaching 1,000 subscribers. If I didn't link this here, go find this one. But yeah, just to kind of point, I'm like, man, there's so much there. This is Christian's channel. There's so much there in that one statement. Temples are not apolitical. Man.
And what this means is that, well, as everyone in the ancient world knew, success in heaven means success below. If you want to be successful below, you need to connect to the gods, to bind yourself to the gods. The word religion, religio, is a binding. You bind yourselves to the gods and you obey them, and the gods will bestow favor on you. That's the way in the ancient world that you get ahead and have a successful kingdom.
Okay. And think about this. I think Paul's going to go into you can look into the book of Revelation and the temple descends, right? The temple in heaven actually descends to earth. And as you look at the description of that temple, the temple is built out of people. The foundation stones are the 12 apostles. The gates are the 12 tribes. There's no temple in the middle of that city. The Lamb and the Lord are the temple. It's a city of people. It's a city of persons, right? It's the person city. I don't know how else to say it, but it's a city, but yet it's a city built out of people.
But Israel's God is a jealous God. And so Israel is always sort of out of step with this polytheistic system. Foreign temples for political reasons become a real problem for Israel and her God. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make a graven image or anything in the heaven above or earth below, and represent God in that way. No statues of the God of Israel. It's a very unique thing. Now, the Romans figured this out and tolerated them because the Romans were very pragmatic people, and it was like, it's better to just let them have their thing on this and not really push them. Otherwise, they'd just simply have revolt after revolt in Judea, and they didn't want that. But these temples were functional for flourishing. A temple was the house where the god lived, where the god was fed, where the god was transacted with. A temple was an embassy of God. It was in some ways a miniature version of the temple that is above the firmament of the earth. You can see that, for example, in the book of Revelation, where there's a temple, a vision of God's temple in heaven. It's sort of a miniature copy on earth, and it also sort of represents the cosmos below. And you can see that in the tabernacle and in the temple in Jerusalem. And relations in the temple create the situation in the land. So temples are vitally important for flourishing in all of the ways that we as human beings experience flourishing. National security, prosperity in terms of the economy. And so if you had a proper temple and were doing that right, the assumption was that God or the gods would bring flourishing down to your people.
Okay. So I didn't think about this. We started with the Tower of Babel, and now we're here with the temple. Which is sort of the inverse of Babel, right? The true temple. It's not really how humanity raises itself up to be divine. It's actually how the divine touches humanity. It's how the divine descends. Jesus will say, something greater than the temple is here. He'll say, tear down this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it again. And it's interesting as we go through the book of John, and I'd be interested, and I'll go back and try to rewatch some of Paul's stuff, but I think it will be interesting to see how Paul navigates some of these things. Now, I think it's in John. Is it early on in John 19? No, he scourges him. They will say that we have no king but Caesar. Help me, help me, help me. It's his trial. I'm sure. That's annoying to watch me scroll. Okay, where is that passage? I'm sure somebody knows in there. We have no. It was John 19. I just scrolled the wrong way. I went the wrong way. All right. And so, you have this group that is ultimately a political group. And again, I think that it's not fair to the first century Judean people to ascribe to them some religious context that they would not have understood. And so anything that's a later development of Judaism, it seems unfair. And so you just take them at their word, or at least the Gospel of John, how John records it. He brought Jesus out. He sat down on the judgment seat. Now it was the day of preparation. The Passover was about 6 hours, and he said to the Judeans, ha Judaios, behold your king. The king, and this is going on in the chat right now. Who is the king of Judah? Who is the king? Who is the Judean king? Pilate says it's Jesus. Behold your king. And so they cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate said to them, shall I crucify your king? The chief priests answered, we have no king but Caesar. Now, again, John tells us that it was the chief priests who said, "We have no king but Caesar." Now, is that a religious move or is that a political move? That's a political move done by the chief priests. They're acting politically, not religion. If it was about religion for them, if this was about religion, they would say, "We have no king but Yahweh." But of course, this has been going on since Samuel, right? They have not rejected you as prophet, but they have rejected me as their king. And that there, 1 Samuel 8:7. I have to get there, otherwise, like, I could be. I don't want to be. I want you guys to trust me. These Bible passages do exist. I just don't always know the address for them. The Lord said to Samuel, "Listen to the voice of the people. This is Israel." "For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them." We have no king but Caesar. So, and you can go back and watch the video that I did. It's just called "Who Are the Jews in John's Gospel?" But I think when you answer that question, a lot of the Gospel of John starts to become more clear. Jesus is fulfilling the prophecy of Ezekiel 37. He's bringing the house of Judah and the house of Ephraim back together. And the way he's able to do that is by resurrecting them. They had to die. They had to die, both Judah and Israel. And I will say one of the points of contention that I'll have with Jason Staples in this book is he seems to imply that the kingdom of Judah never fully dies. The kingdom of Israel dies. And we equate banishment and exile with death. And it's like, well, no, if Judah never dies, then Judah can't be resurrected. And so, yeah, I think that, let's see, we'll go to that. I mean, I've talked about some of the books already. Let's see, PVK on John. We talked a little bit about Joe Rogan and the human chimera. Again, this is Babel stuff. This is like, the Nephilim type of things. This is not new, It sounds strange, but it's really not. This is going to be the sort of the techno. C.S. Lewis almost sort of prophetically wrote about this in That Hideous Strength, where the scientists, these Western men who were just materialists didn't realize they were playing with spirits when they created this man without a chest, right? Just the head, and the machine was working the head. It's really coming to life here now, but it's AI, it's robotics, it's all these other things. But again, I think this is why it's so important for me to encourage people to sort of take Jesus' word, who he is, because there are many false Christs that will come up. And so so I'll probably take some clips from this. There was an interesting conversation here on the Jesse Michaels podcast. And then Tim Dillon is always a good one. If you ever want to just have like a good time, it's the Tim Dillon, Joe Rogan experience. I have not had a lot of time for Joe Rogan recently, which is a bummer because, again, that was one of the things that inspired this podcast, was just realizing something's going on here, and it has to do with how we're sharing information. We're telling stories. We're getting into these dialogues that allow you to sort of enter into a flow state, and what comes out of that flow state, I think, is really interesting, particularly as a person. I believe there's sort of common grace, and so what we're creating, I think, to some degree, is connected to our Creator. And so you may see a video here where I deal with Joe Rogan and the idea of a chimera, the idea of a human divine, human AI chimera. And looking at how the Bible sort of anticipates that with Genesis chapter 4, the Nephilim. So those are there. Jason Staples' review. I already kind of talked about that. I will say, like, the subtitle of his book is the title of his book is Paul and the Resurrection of Israel, Jews, Former Gentiles, Israelites. And just to give you a sense of where I'm going, I would suggest that the subtitle to his book would be Former Gentiles, Former Jews, the resurrection of all Israel. But you can see his presupposition going into the book is that, Jews can remain Jews, but Gentiles have to be former Gentiles. Why am I doing this in the teeny tiny window? I don't know why I'm doing it. But so Gentiles have to be former Gentiles in order to be part of Israel. But Jews don't have to become former Jews. I think Isaiah gives us the impression that out of the stump of Jesse came the only living shoot. So the remnant that is so small that a child could count, right? And I think the first number a child learns is the number 1. I think the remnant of Israel falls down to one living person. I think there are a lot of people in the Gospel of John who are, it's like the harvest is ripe, right? The harvest is ready. There are a lot of people who want to hear the message of Jesus, but from a nation standpoint, they've fallen away. There is no remnant, or Jesus is the only remnant. And then, I'm interested in some covenant theology. I'm thinking of doing. I haven't had the time. It's been hard for me to set this up. So, George, I'll reach out if you end up finding this video. I'll reach out. Hopefully, we can get a live stream going. Just want to talk about covenant theology. And maybe some of what I'm exploring in seminary at the moment. The two topics I'm interested in within seminary are actually, they'll probably be down here. I have another channel called Youth Ministry, etc., where I do a little bit more of just like Christian ministry stuff as it pertains to youth ministry. This channel is more me exploring theology and giving myself permission to think strange things. So I would ministry as an ecosystem. And the exploring the connection between story and divine revelation. This is really here. This would really go here, and then what I want to do, and I'll talk to you guys more about this, and you can kind of spread the word. But you may see a fundraiser coming up. I have a trip coming up to do some research specific to this topic, exploring the connection between story and divine revelation. And it's going to require me to travel a little bit. And so I want to do a little fundraising for that, just so we're not putting too much pressure on the family. So thank you guys for hanging out. I might try to catch up a little bit on some chat really quick if you guys are still hanging out. Thank you. Septuagint is literal history, Hunna Superior, Greeks. Okay, you guys are... Tim Dillon does have a way to take a real subject and speak about it in a revelatory way without seemingly be. He's a comedian. Tim Dillon's a comedian. This is the power of comedy. This is why John's gospel has elements of comedy in it. And this is why story is so important. They're similar in their ability to do a lot with a little. A comedian can do so much with a punchline, and a storyteller or a poet can do a lot with just a simple simile. You can open up a whole nother world of dialogue within a very condensed space. And so when we're talking about divine revelation and how God is going to reveal truth about his divine nature to finite humanity, knowing the limitations of our finite mind, he's going to have to use a tool that has a high level of compression, and stories can do that. They can compress a lot of information down into a small space. All right. If you mean Paul was a traitor, I'm going to say hypotaste to you, and I hope. Hopefully you're not talking about Paul Vanderklay. Maybe you're talking about Paul the Apostle. That's fine. You can say that he does say, Paul says that he had to abandon his former life in Judaism to follow Jesus. And so again, another point to this conversation between how Christianity and Judaism interact with each other. Paul becomes a Christian, and in order to become Paul the Apostle becomes a Christian, and in order to do that, he has to walk away from Judaism. Judaism, if you translate it out, is the way of the Judeans. And so he had to abandon the way of the Judeans in order to follow the way of Christ. And that's why early Christians were just called followers of the way. There was no geographical connection. Like it wasn't Ephesus or some of these locations. It wasn't like the way of the Ephesians or the way of the Judeans or the way of the Athenians. It was just the way, because it was international. John's gospel is hardcore racist. You should look at my video about that. It's actually not racist at all. It's the fact that we're being lazy in how we define our terms. Yeah, Tim Dillon would be a powerful conversation. Hapasha. Okay, sorry. Hypatia. Sorry. I'm so bad. I really do apologize. Names are important, and I'm like, and my eyes are not great to begin with, and there's really small text, and so I'm making excuses for myself, but in the end, I just sort of apologize for wrecking anyone's name. And let's see. I did a video specifically on that, addressing, I think I just closed the tab that had my own, yeah. So let's see, we go back to Strange Theology over here. We go to videos, and was it a live stream? I may have dealt with it in a live stream more than anything. I think, yeah, it was here. Who are the Jews in John's Gospel? This guy, I don't know his name. He made a short video saying, the John's Gospel seems really anti-Semitic. It's like, it's not anti-Semitic at all. You're reading it wrong. Sorry. Like, that's part of the problem. Conversion, Pete Lowe. Conversion, conversation. I read something wrong. Oh, powerful conversion. Yes, it would be a powerful conversation and a powerful conversion. You are right. Yes, you're more right. I was see, this the text. The text is so small. My boomer eyes can't pick it out. All right. Hey, thank you guys for hanging in there. We've been at it for a little while. Thanks for letting me just sort of get a few things off my chest. Thanks for hanging in there again. I love this tool that we have called podcasting. I am sorry that recently I have not. I've just have this backlog. I just have this backlog of stuff I want to talk about. I would love to get in. We didn't finish Baron Coleman. I would love to get into more of that. And again, I think there are a few things that Baron has said on his podcast that lead me to believe he's right there with us when it comes to the power of the word and following the truth, following the Logos, and using this platform, using podcasts to do that. And so, yeah, as we go, as I explore more, I actually have two book ideas that I want to put out to you. One is this, the other is this. Ministry as Ecosystem, and then the connection between story and divine revelation. I'm going to try to have a rough draft or an outline of sort of chapters and topics for the idea of ministry as an ecosystem sometime soon, but it'll probably be on my other channel. And so I might do something with both of these channels here in a little bit, but yeah, darn words, they always get in the way. But thank you, and probably you're probably picking up on it as I do this live stream. But I should probably just say, this is a little bit of I'm on a little bit of a vacation from podcasting. I'm not, I was doing a video every Monday and a live stream every Tuesday night or something like that. I was hoping I could get a live stream a week in, and I think the reality is there's just too much going on in other places. I want to make sure I don't lose control of some of that. My wife started a business. We moved houses. Yada 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 yada. There's just lots of things I'm thinking about. I got accepted into seminary, so I'll be doing my MDiv. There's just quite a few things going on. Some of it will naturally lean into podcasting, particularly some of the stuff that I'm doing with seminary. And I've done this before. If I'm putting together a sermon or if I'm writing an essay on a topic, I will probably use this podcast as a place to sort of talk through some of that. So thank you guys for being there for that and sort of respecting that process. And so, yeah, and thank you. I mean, even Hypatia, you know, I understand that you have strong opinions. You're saying Jesus was hardcore cruel. And again, like I would thank you. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. Jesus was, you know, you're just saying these things. Jesus is truly frightful. Okay. Like I get it. You have those ideas. Where do those ideas come from? Like, what are you saying? Why are you saying that? And be patient with a sense of dialogue. Be a little bit more open to dialogue. Yes, of course, I'm a Christian person. I believe I've come into contact with the person of Jesus. I believe that he has changed my life. I don't believe he is frightful. I don't believe he's cruel. I do think that you have gotten a straw man version of Christianity. I think that you are falling for the trap that says Christianity is this, that, or the other. And what I would encourage you to do is go to Jesus, go to the Gospels, and read it for yourself. And maybe you have read it, but read it with a sense of curiosity about what Christianity and who the person of Jesus truly is. And so even though I can tell that, you know, you and I probably would disagree on a few things, I appreciate that you are here. And I will catch you guys in the next one. I'm going to just leave it like this for us. No, I'm going to leave it like, what am I going to leave it like? I'm going to leave it like, nope. Okay. I'm going to leave it like that for a second, and then I will say adieu once the delay catches up. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you.